the midst of chaos, noise, and overwhelming fear, Elijah found himself alone in a cave, exhausted, discouraged, and questioning everything. But it was there, in the silence, that he encountered something unexpected: a gentle whisper. In this video, we'll explore Elijah's moment with God's still, small voice, and what it teaches us about finding hope, clarity, and courage in our own moments of struggle. Let's journey through his story and discover how that same quiet voice still speaks today. The passage where Elijah hears God's still, small voice is found in 1 Kings 19:11-13. In this moment, Elijah is hiding in a cave on Mount Horeb, feeling overwhelmed and alone. God tells him to stand on the mountain, and then a powerful wind, an earthquake, and a fire pass by. But God is not in any of them. Finally, Elijah hears a gentle whisper, and it is in that quiet moment that God speaks to him. Let's turn to the passage.
So he said, "Go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?"
Elijah's story unfolds during a turbulent time in Israel's history, when the nation was deeply divided, and many had turned away from worshiping Yahweh to follow Baal, a Canaanite deity. Elijah appears in 1 Kings 17, during the reign of King Ahab, who, along with his wife Jezebel, promoted Baal worship and persecuted the prophets of God. Elijah's mission was to call the people of Israel back to faithfulness. His journey was filled with dramatic moments, such as being fed by ravens during a drought and raising a widow's son from the dead. One of his most famous actions was challenging the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, where God sent down fire from heaven to consume Elijah's offering, which had been drenched in water. This showdown was a turning point for Israel, as it not only revealed God's power, but also proved that Baal did not exist. Although Israel briefly returned to God, the implications of Elijah's actions were eternally relevant. But Elijah's journey isn't all triumph. After the Mount Carmel victory, Jezebel threatens his life, and Elijah flees into the wilderness, exhausted and despairing. It's in this low moment that he encounters God, not in wind, earthquake, or fire, but in a gentle whisper. Elijah's fear played a pivotal role in his encounter with God in 1 Kings 19. He was exhausted, disillusioned, and deeply afraid, so much so that he asked God to take his life. Rather than rebuking Elijah, God responded with compassion. He provided him with food and rest, and eventually guided him to Mount Horeb, where Elijah experienced God's presence. It was only after Elijah had the opportunity to rest, reflect, and let go of his fears that he could truly encounter God in a gentle whisper. It seems that God waited until Elijah's heart was quiet enough to listen attentively. He had to move through his fear and despair to reach a place of stillness, and in that stillness he heard God. In his journey, Elijah learned timeless truths that still speak to us today. He discovered the importance of standing firm in faith, even when fear and doubt press in. He saw that God is always present, even in moments of deep despair. Elijah's story reminds us that God invites us to participate in his work, equips those who serve him with provision and strength, and understands the weight of our struggles. Even the faithful aren't exempt. Through obedience, Elijah experienced the blessing of God's guidance, and in the quiet on Mount Horeb, he realized a powerful truth: we are never truly alone. Elijah's life reminds us that unwavering faith doesn't mean a life free of fear or hardship. It means holding steady when the storms come. Even in moments of deep anxiety and exhaustion, Elijah returned to God, finding strength not in his own might, but in quiet obedience and trust. His story challenges us to stand firm in conviction, to trust even when outcomes seem uncertain, and to seek peace not in external victories, but in the still, small voice of God. Following Elijah's example means walking faithfully, even when the road feels lonely. Stand firm, therefore. Stand firm. Elijah spent many years in faithful devotion and close relationship with Yahweh. His story is filled with timeless lessons that still resonate today. For instance, Elijah demonstrated great courage as he learned to stand firm in his convictions, boldly confronting King Ahab and the prophets of Baal, even when he stood alone. The truth is worth defending, even when it is unpopular. God is always with us. God is not only revealed through his majestic and powerful displays, such as the roaring thunder during a storm or the awe-inspiring beauty of a sunrise, but he is also profoundly present in the more subdued, quieter moments of life. Even in times when God may seem distant or silent, his presence can still be felt in the tranquil stillness of a quiet mind. These moments serve as a reminder that, irrespective of whether we perceive his presence or not, God is always with us, quietly guiding and supporting us through the challenges of everyday life. God allows us to participate. Elijah's fervent prayers had profound effects, leading to periods of drought, the subsequent gift of rain, and even the miraculous raising of individuals from the dead. Through these extraordinary events, God imparted valuable lessons to Elijah about the nature and significance of prayer. Elijah learned that while God possesses the ultimate power to fulfill his will independently, he chose to involve Elijah in his divine work. This partnership was not merely a privilege but a profound journey that helped deepen Elijah's faith and cultivate his trust in God's plan. By engaging in prayer, Elijah found a deeper connection to the Almighty, understanding that each act of intercession and obedience was a step towards a more intimate relationship with his Creator. God provides for those who serve him. From the serene brook nestled in the heart of the wilderness to the widow's remarkably inexhaustible jar of oil, Elijah encountered the profound depth of God's provision manifested through miraculous events. In the midst of desolation and uncertainty, God ensured that Elijah's needs were met in extraordinary ways, demonstrating his unwavering support for those who dedicate their lives to serving him faithfully. Each act of provision reinforced the truth that, no matter the circumstances, God will always supply the needs of those who earnestly seek and serve him. Even the faithful struggle. Following his remarkable victory on Mount Carmel, where he demonstrated the power of God against the prophets of Baal, Elijah found himself sinking into deep despair. Despite his triumph, he was overwhelmed by threats and the challenges of his mission, leading him to contemplate giving up altogether. In this dark moment, God approached Elijah with profound compassion rather than judgment. This encounter highlights the reality of spiritual burnout, illustrating that even the most devoted individuals can face moments of intense struggle and discouragement. Elijah's experience serves as a powerful reminder that God meets us in our lowest points, offering the support and understanding we so desperately need during our times of trial. Obedience brings blessing. Elijah demonstrated remarkable faith by faithfully adhering to God's instructions, even when the directives seemed illogical or challenging to understand. His unwavering obedience not only showcased his trust in divine wisdom, but also became a catalyst for profound miracles and transformational changes in his life and the lives of those around him. Through his actions, Elijah created a pathway for extraordinary events to unfold, revealing the power and purpose of following God's guidance, regardless of the circumstances. We are never truly alone. Elijah, a dedicated servant of God, found himself in a moment of deep despair, believing he was the sole faithful follower remaining in a world that had largely turned away from the true God. He felt utterly isolated in his commitment, standing against the tide of idolatry and evil represented by Baal worship. However, God graciously revealed to Elijah a profound truth. There were still thousands of individuals across the land who had remained loyal and faithful, refusing to kneel or offer allegiance to Baal. This revelation served as a powerful reminder that even when we feel alone in our beliefs and struggles, we are part of a much larger narrative woven together by God. It emphasizes that our faith and perseverance matter, and that we are never truly isolated in our journey, as others share our commitment to truth and righteousness. How did Elijah calm his anxiety and find stillness? He found a place where he was physically safe, but his anxiety remained as long as his mind was drawn to the threat he imagined. His fear paralyzed him with an imagined future, but God helped Elijah return to the now through his acts of kindness. Elijah became focused on the present, taking note of the things he could see and hear at that moment. God asks him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" In this way, God invited Elijah to acknowledge his distress, fear, isolation, and sense of failure. God doesn't correct him or dismiss his feelings. Instead, he listens, then gently redirects Elijah's focus, giving him rest, nourishment, and a renewed sense of purpose. The cave became a kind of sacred threshold for Elijah. After the chaos of his ministry and the terror of fleeing for his life, he found himself in that quiet, dark space on Mount Horeb. There, the noise of the world, both literal and emotional, was stripped away. And it was in that stillness that God met him, not in the wind, earthquake, or fire, but in a gentle whisper. Cave didn't just shelter Elijah from danger. It symbolized a pause, a turning inward. It gave him space to rest, to name his pain, and to hear the voice of God in a way he hadn't before. In that silence, Elijah wasn't just protected, he was reoriented. Elijah's journey is a masterclass in faith, resilience, and divine intimacy. His faith was grounded in the truth, knowledge, and wisdom that God supplied. However, Elijah was also spiritually and emotionally grounded in his quiet interactions with God, away from distractions. When we long to hear God's voice, the world's clamor can drown out his gentle whisper. Noise overload fills our ears and minds, leaving no space for sacred conversation. Inner restlessness unsettles our spirits, making quiet time with God feel elusive. We wrap ourselves in busyness as identity, mistaking constant doing for divine calling. Through avoidance patterns, we resist the vulnerability needed to truly listen. The pull of comparison and performance distorts our spiritual hearing, causing us to chase approval rather than alignment with his heart. Yet God's voice hasn't faded. It waits patiently beyond the distractions, steady and still, calling us back to him. Noise overload. In our fast-paced world, we're constantly bombarded by a flurry of stimuli, social media alerts, the latest music streaming in the background, or the ever-present buzz of conversation around us. These distractions can easily drown out the quiet, gentle whisper of God's presence, making it challenging to hear his guidance amidst the noise. It's crucial to carve out moments of stillness in our day, allowing ourselves the space to listen and connect with the divine, rather than letting the chaos of everyday life overshadow that profound relationship. Inner restlessness. The experience of racing thoughts, persistent anxieties, or the relentless voice of an inner critic can create a challenging internal environment that makes it hard to find moments of stillness. Even in the midst of silence and tranquility in our surroundings, these mental distractions can persist, overwhelming us with an incessant stream of worries and self-doubt. It becomes increasingly difficult to quiet the mind and embrace a sense of peace when these thoughts continue to swirl relentlessly, preventing us from fully engaging with the present moment. Find ways to turn your attention to the present. Busyness as identity. When our sense of self-worth becomes intertwined with our level of productivity, it can transform even our spiritual practices into mere tasks on a never-ending to-do list. In this scenario, moments that should be filled with connection and reflection, such as spending time with God, can instead feel like just another obligation we have to fulfill amidst our busy schedules. We may approach these sacred moments with a sense of urgency, ticking them off like items on a checklist, rather than immersing ourselves in the experience of faith and communion. This shift not only diminishes the intended meaning of our time with God, but also creates a cycle of stress and disconnection from our true spiritual needs. Avoidance patterns. Often, we find ourselves subconsciously evading moments of solitude with God. This avoidance stems from a deep-rooted fear of facing what might arise in the stillness, that we could confront feelings of grief that we've long suppressed, guilt from past actions we haven't reconciled, or perhaps a divine calling we're not yet prepared to embrace. The silence can be daunting, as it holds the potential to bring forth emotions and thoughts we'd rather keep buried. And this fear can prevent us from experiencing the transformative power of a quiet connection with the divine. Comparison and performance. Spiritual distraction can often manifest as a relentless pursuit, a constant comparison of our journey with that of others, or a compulsion to ensure we are doing it right. This striving takes us out of the present moment, pulling our focus away from simply being in the presence of God. Instead of immersing ourselves in the tranquility of connection and authenticity, we become preoccupied with the benchmarks and expectations set by others, losing sight of the peace that comes from genuine communion with the divine. Elijah's story reminds us that even in our darkest, most uncertain moments, God is tenderly near. When life is loud and our hearts are weary, His voice comes in the quiet, steady, gentle, and full of grace. As we learn from Elijah's journey, we see that God is faithful to sustain us, invite us into His purposes, and walk with us every step of the way. We are never truly alone, and when we choose obedience and trust, even through fear and doubt, God meets us with provision, peace, and powerful reassurance. Let this message be a beacon of hope for anyone needing to hear His still, small voice today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful to your own studies. If you did, please click thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.